the retro game store. Seem to be popping up a lot more these days, or at least it seems to me like they are. Maybe I just didn't pay attention before, but it seems like nowadays there's a lot more retro game shops popping up literally all over the place. And at one time, me and my best friend, we owned our own little retro game store. What's up, Grim Crew? Welcome back to the channel for another video. Welcome back to my gaming dungeon. I am the Grim Gamer. My friends call me D. Thanks for stopping by to check this video out. In this video, I want to go over and document and I guess preserve the brief history of the small game store that my best friend, Nostalgic Nick, you know him, you've seen him here on the channel before, we used to own together, and just a way to, you know, share that experience with all of you. The shop that we had was CD's Games, and CD's Games, we had a lot of good ideas and a lot of ambition, but we just didn't have everything that we needed in order to make it last or make it extremely successful, unfortunately. But it was something that we really wanted to do, that we had a passion for, and we thought that we really could make something work out of it, so we decided to give it that old college try. But before I get into the history of CD's Games, it actually started slightly before that. We got to go back to the beginning. So, Nick was working with a young lady that had I'm not exactly sure what kind of shop we'd call it, but she had a place where she would rent out space in that storefront for other people to bring in their own things that they could sell and things like that. He started working with her because he started selling a few things and even started doing some repairs, electronic repairs out of that place. And Nick and I started discussing, you know, this idea of, you know, bringing retro games into the shop and doing it a certain way. The idea was, like, we always thought it'd be cool to start our own arcade. You know, you don't see arcades really anymore. There's a few, and I think even those are starting to pop up here and there a little bit more over the last several years. It may continue. I would like to see it continue, but our idea was a little different because, well, arcade cabinets are expensive and more money than we would have ever had probably. So we thought it would be cool to take video game consoles, the retro consoles, maybe some CRT TVs, put them together and create stations, and that way people could come in and pay for an hour or the day or whatever, and they could come in with their friends or their family, their siblings, whatever, and sit down and play these games at the shop. And unlike an arcade cabinet that's only going to play, you know, that specific game, you know, if we had, you know, 3-4 consoles, some TVs, you know, whichever, at least small, you know, just to start out with, then they could play whatever games that we had at our disposal at the time. So the idea was you'd get to play a bunch of these old school games and just switch out the cartridges and just play whatever it is that you wanted. We started putting all of that stuff together. That was early 2022, and that actually didn't last very long. Unfortunately, we got things set up, and I mean, again, it's set up as best we could. We only did that for a couple of weeks, and something was going on. I don't really know the details, and it wasn't working out, at least not the way that I think we would have liked it to, or it was I don't know, there was kind of an odd time there, and so we decided, you know, we don't want to continue doing this way at this place, and, you know, let's not do that. But at that time, I had bought a couple of consoles. I had brought my CRT up there and had purchased several games. With Nick's help, I went and sold a bunch of stuff. I was riding motorcycles at the time and had been riding motorcycles for several years at that point, and I had just accumulated a bunch of odds and ends, parts and pieces, things of that nature. And so with his help, we sold a bunch of that stuff. I had some old like playing cards and stuff here around, just other stuff that I probably wasn't ever going to use again, and took that money, and that's what I used to buy several of these things to take up there. And so at that point, I'm already, have invested money into, several things to try to do something with this. And then, a couple weeks later, I'm lugging all the stuff back to my house, and, there it was. And Nick and I had discussed a couple times shortly thereafter, like, I wish we could, really tried to make a go of this and really tried to make this work and do something with it. We felt like the idea was solid. And just said, it could happen again still one day, but let's just sit on it, and we'll keep that in the back of our minds, and we'll see what might come up later. It was maybe a couple weeks, a month at best, after that, where he called me up one day and he said, "D, I found us a place." And I'm like, "Bro, I just lugged all this crap to my house, and I thought we were going to sit on this, right? And I thought we were going to, try to plan this out a little bit more, or just wait for the right opportunity." He goes, "No, dude, you don't understand. I found this place, and the rent is very cheap. It's doable. I've talked to the guy, and I think we can make this work." And okay, well, go up there and we check the place out, and it's It wasn't perfect, it wasn't ideal, but it was a space. It was our own space, and we thought that we could, we really could try to do something here. So here I am in front of the shop, the former shop. This is the location where CD's Games used to be, the former home of CD's Games. We had this building for maybe about 2 years, but only about a year of that it actually was CD's Games. And in about March or so of 2024, Nick would bring in another friend of ours, and they would rebrand it, and they would try to go in a different direction, but that was more or less their baby. I would kind of stay on as just somebody that they could ask for opinions and everything, but CD's Games, as I was really a part of it and was, partially mine, was right here in this location. And we haven't been completely out of here for very long. Nick and our other buddy, as Nostalgic Nick's is what it was renamed as, would go on for about another year, and Nick unfortunately had to pull everything out of here probably about March or so, February, March, something like that of this year, 2025. And it is currently now November as I film this, and as you can see, there's still nothing actually here. Nobody else has moved into this location yet, and I think that kind of goes to show one of the main issues of this area, which I'll touch on in a little bit. But we used to have big CD's Games sign here in the window, and there used to be a sign over here. Nick's mother was the one that actually did all the signage for us, so shout out to her. That still very much appreciated. Thank you very much for that. But some of the lettering is actually still on the window. It just never been taken down, and yeah, nobody else has moved into this location, but this used to be the home of CD's Games, and a lot of good memories here. We had a lot of good times here. It's just unfortunately it didn't last as long as we would have liked, and it didn't turn out exactly the way we would have liked it to, but this was the place. So I started lugging all of the stuff back up there, and we were brainstorming different ideas, different names, logos, and trying to find even more things to bring to the shop that were cheap, that we could turn this into something. And so we posted like the first picture of the shop on April 3rd of 2022. With the plan of opening on May 5th. So we had a month to try to, get this together and try to get, things organized as best we can with what we had at our disposal, and just try to pop up a, retro game shop, or at least it wasn't even a game shop then. That wasn't necessarily the idea. This version of an arcade that we had come up with in a month's time. So in preparation, Nick found a couple old couches and found like this hutch-looking thing, and the shop inside already had like a display cabinet. And so the idea that we had going into this is that, again, I brought up the arcade thing, but with consoles instead. But the idea, the way that I saw it, I can't speak for him necessarily, but the way I saw it in our discussions was to create an atmosphere that we felt or remembered when we were kids. So you would go to your friend's house, or you would sit there with your siblings or whichever, and you'd sit on the couch, you'd maybe be snacking, you'd play some games, you'd, throw some cheap shots and some jabs at them, trying to beat them in whatever game it was you were playing or whatever. And just that kind of environment and atmosphere that we grew up with in the late 90s, early 2000s, and just somewhere where people could come with their friends, their siblings, sit down on the couch, play some games. We would have, snacks, and we'd have drinks and stuff, and just create that homey atmosphere from back in the day that we remembered from so long ago. And we thought that it was a really, really cool idea. We had some other neat ideas too, I think, is that we wanted to, of course, get our name out there, on social media and on different platforms, things of that nature. So a couple of the other ideas that we had is we wanted to start streaming. And then we wanted to do a YouTube channel, get the Facebook page going, that sort of thing, and we could share what this experience was supposed to be. And not only doing the streaming from the shop ourselves, but we also had this other cool idea where we thought, and we hadn't even been streaming all that. I started to do a couple streams at the previous location. I'd done a couple there, and the idea to get our name out there. These are the games that we're playing here, and you could come here and play these games. Not necessarily thinking with the foresight of, these streams may be seen globally, not just in our little community, right? Like nowadays, I even have somebody from halfway across the country. There was one other person that was watching my streams, all the way from like Finland or something like that. Somebody's not going to watch our stuff and, from Finland and come and play these games in our shop. That wasn't actually ever going to happen. So that might not have been the best idea, but the idea was to get our name out there using the streams with the games that we had in the shop. And we also wanted to take that a step further. We wanted to take one of the little rooms. There was like these little rooms in the front room where we could maybe make this into like a streaming booth. And the thought here was that anybody else that came into the shop, if they ever thought about streaming or ever wanted to get into streaming and didn't know how, or didn't have the equipment, didn't have the space, whatever the case may be, where somebody actually couldn't do the streaming themselves if they wanted to get into it, we could provide a place for them to do that. And so the idea was that there would have been some guidelines, of course, because they essentially would have been streaming on our channels doing this. So, with our name, our logos, that sort of thing. So there would have been some guidelines we had to put in place probably. But the idea was that would give them a platform and a space to do this and get into themselves. And if at some point they wanted to branch off and just, do their own thing or whatever, they could definitely do that. But it could be a starting point for them on top of, growing our own channel, our own brand, and then if somebody wanted to take and do their own thing, we could bring somebody else in, or whatever the case was. But it was a cool idea, I thought, that we had on top of the YouTube channel, where I was going to make just some other gaming related content, post it, and post it here on this channel. Actually, the channel that you're watching right now is the old CDs Games YouTube channel. I'll touch base on that a little bit later, but so we wanted to get stuff out there online on top of being able to play games in the shop. So then we were brainstorming the ideas for the names and the logos, just the brand itself, and we came up with CDs Games. And CDs Games, growing up and even now, a lot of games, they come on discs. Not necessarily CDs per se, but, on discs themselves. And the C and the D, that goes back to Nick and myself also. The C and the D are some of our initials. So the D is the first initial of my first name. The C is the first initial of his last name. We put them together, CDs Games. We thought we were being, creative, and it worked. And, we thought that, we were being, slick with it and everything. And, in hindsight, I don't know if that really necessarily was the best choice, per se. I mean, a lot of things come on CD. When I think of CDs, I usually even think of music. So that might not have been the best one, but I personally have never been the best at naming things. But, we thought we were being creative, and, it worked. And, so that's what we decided to roll with. We even tried to come up with, some little, sayings or slogans or something, So we used this in the social media a couple times. One of them we had was, CDs Games, see these games. CDs Games, well, play these games at CDs Games. We thought we were being slick.
CDs Games? You see these games, yo? Play these games. At CDs Games. Celebrate gaming.
So with just 1 month to prepare, get set up, we did the best we could with what we had. And on May the 5th, 2022, we were officially open for business. And I don't recall getting a single person in that day. There may have been one or two that maybe stopped in, but I don't think, if my memory serves me correctly, not a single person came in. Part of the problem, though, was that we didn't really advertise, and we should have. And we tried to share some stuff on social media and stuff, of course, but that was only going to go so far. We didn't have the money for any kind of other advertising or anything like that. We were strapped with just what it was that we were already buying and putting in the shop and trying to do. So I don't think nobody really knew that we were even there. And then over the course of the next day or two, whichever, some of our other friends did stop by. A couple family members, they stopped by to check things out, but that was it. We didn't get basically any traffic, when we first opened, and that was a bit of a blow, and that hurt my confidence in it, really quickly. Again, we thought we had some solid ideas, but we realized very quickly, within that first week or two probably, that just the playing games aspect of it, it wasn't going to be enough. It just, I don't know if it's just because nobody knew we were there, or if there just wasn't necessarily a market for that, per se. But we realized very quickly that just coming in and just sitting here playing games, that wasn't going to work the way that we wanted to. It wasn't going to be enough. So we decided very early on that we needed to do the buy-sell trade also, basically. We basically needed to become a retro game store, and that's where the actual retro game store portion of this comes in. And that was only a couple weeks. We would still want to keep the playing games aspect of it, but also buy, sell, and trade at the same time. It's just being able to play games in the shop was just going to be another thing that you could do while you were there. And that way, not only could you play the games that we had at our disposal, but our library of games theoretically would they would change. It would change, hopefully, quite frequently. And, you'd be able to play, some games at one point, and then sometime down the road we would have some different stuff, and you'd be able to play different games. On top of other ones that we were also just buying to bring in ourselves to, try to buy and trade with or sell, or just, play on the systems, all that kind of stuff. So very quickly we decided that we needed to do that. In addition to that, we also started hosting monthly tournaments. We started hosting a monthly Super Smash Bros. Ultimate tournament, hoping that that would also garner some interest to bring people into the store. And it did at first. The first one that we did, I think we got a group of 6 to 8 people or something like that. But the problem with that became that it didn't grow. It didn't go anywhere. We would get that same group every time, and we did this for several months, but it didn't go anywhere after that. Now, that being said, if any of those people ever actually do see this and watch this, thank you. Greatly appreciate you guys coming out and supporting us for that, and everybody had a good time, but it didn't grow. It didn't go any further than just that initial couple people. No matter what we tried to do some other themes with, doing the tournament, but also doing like a theme sale or something for the shop on top of it. We tried to get, we would even bring in pizza from a local pizza place. We tried several different things to try to get more interest in this, but it didn't do anything. It didn't go anywhere, and it also didn't help sales at all whatsoever, period. 1 or 2 of the guys may have bought a game here or there, but that was the extent of it. And, just nothing. It wasn't really helping in the grand scheme of things. So with that, we also tried setting up a month-long game challenge. For instance, we did one that was like a Pac-Man, old school Pac-Man. I believe it was on the NES, and somebody could come in if they're looking around. They can, check things out, and they could also, try to set the high score. And if you, at the end of the month, if you had the high score, you'd leave, a phone number with us and stuff like that or whatever. And if you had the high score at the end of the month, you would win a prize of some sort, whatever we could do at that time. That didn't work. I think 1 or 2 people may have actually tried to, do that challenge, and that never went anywhere. So things just were not progressing at all. But that all being said, it was still a good time. Nick and I still had a lot of fun with this. It gave us time to just hang out, shoot the breeze, play some games together. We were trying to stream a couple things together. He was still doing the repairs, and that was doing fairly well. I think that was about the only thing that was really doing any sort of business was the repair stuff. But, people would bring something in. The HDMI ports, you did a slew of those things on several different consoles, and he was repairing those, but you repair that one thing for somebody, and then we would never see them again. People didn't come back. But we still were having fun with it, and we were doing our absolute best. We were still trying to, purchase more games, bring them in. We were trying to get more accessories to fill the space. We were trying to even reorganize the shop the way that it looked. So when you walked in the door, we tried to, make it look the best we could with what we had. That may have been somewhat to our detriment. We could never leave anything alone, but we were trying everything that we could try with everything that we had, which wasn't much. So every time anybody would come in, if it was a returning person, it would look completely different than the way it did before. And we were just trying to fill the space the best we can. But we didn't have the money. That was the big thing. We didn't have the resources we needed to really make this look like a game store should have. So when I look back, at that time, and I look back some of the pictures and stuff from it, it just never truly looked like a game store. And I think a lot of that came from, we had one idea going in, we pivoted from that idea, at some, very early on, and it just, we couldn't afford to make it look the way it was supposed to, and we didn't have the money to, do proper advertising for it either. So there was just a bunch of things working against us, on top of it. In addition to no money, not enough inventory, which, to be honest, looking back at it now, we may have had like an eighth of the inventory we probably should have to try to do this. We didn't have enough. I also didn't have the time for this. I was working a full-time job. I'm still working that full-time job. And so I could only get to the shop one day a week. It was typically Saturdays to try to go up there and try to help him out and do what I could. He was trying to do this full-time, and he was doing the best that he could with it, but he was pretty much on his own. And, we agreed, we discussed this going in, that I didn't have the kind of time that I should to devote to try to do this, because I have too many obligations. I simply can't devote enough time to it. So I did the best I could. I'd go up there on Saturdays. I would try to share things on social media. I would try to still design stuff for the posters, for the tournaments, and as he was still trying to do the repairs, I was trying to learn some of the repair stuff with him. It's thanks to him that I now know how to tear apart an original NES and switch the pin connector, which I actually need to do on my own console, to be quite honest with you. But, I learned that from him. So, we didn't have I didn't have the time. We didn't have the money, and the space itself, I think, the location also didn't help us. The location itself, was in an area, a part of town that people went through. Nobody actually went to that part of town for anything. At least this is the way I see it. Nick may think differently on this, but people went through that area, not to that area. All the action was on the other side of town. So we weren't in the correct location. On the flip side of that, though, if it weren't for that location, we never would have had a chance to do this anyways, because how little the rent was every month. So if it weren't for this location, we wouldn't have had a chance to even try to do this. I wouldn't be talking to you about it now. It just never would have happened. So it was a double-edged sword. But it just, that's just how it was. So again, we opened in May of 2022, and throughout the months, I was trying to post, the individual games, like on Facebook, the consoles, trying to get it known that we have these things, that they are for sale. And on top of that, I also started posting my own pickups for things, for my own collection, just to get something else, on the platform, just like maybe even start trying to get some kind of game discussions going, or, something to that effect. Again, with my full-time job, I can only get to the shop one day a week, so at least if I was posting some of the other things that I was getting, then it was something that I could do from my own home when I got home from work, things like that. So I started trying to do a little bit of that, just trying to get something out there. But it was around, this time, this had to probably be January, that following year, January 2023, where I realized that a bunch of the games coming into the shop, I'd kind of like to have had for myself. So, some would come in, and I found myself actually just paying Nick for some of them and adding them to my own collection. Some that I grew up with and some that I would have liked to have played again. And just, I started really collecting late 2022, early 2023. And I found myself really enjoying that aspect of it. And I couldn't help it. I was seeing we had some cool stuff come through the shop. At one point we had a Panasonic 3DO console that I wish I could have afforded. We had like a copy of Earthbound come in for the SNES. We had the Sega Game Gear come in with a bunch of games, but like all of this cool stuff. And I'm like, man, I would like to have that, Oh, I'd like to have that. Oh, this would be really cool to have. And, so my collecting hobby really started to kick in around that time also. But around that time, this is now, early 2023, January, February, we were starting to feel it, just the discouragement. I mean, nothing we were doing seemed to be working. We weren't selling a lot, very little. The tournaments weren't growing. No one was coming to the shop. As I mentioned, the repairs were probably the only thing that was doing much of anything, and it may not even lasted that long if the repairs weren't doing somewhat decent. But we just could not get any interest going whatsoever, and we had reorganized things several times. We had tried to bring in more stuff. We tried to advertise on Facebook more. And just nothing was working. And we were, I can't speak for him, but I was really starting to get burnt out and discouraged that, all this time, this effort, this money, and nothing's happening. It's not going anywhere. On the fact that I still had no time because of my job, now around this time, Nick was having some other things go on too. Some family stuff. That's not for me to discuss, but, life was getting in the way, is what was happening. And so since I couldn't be there, and he was having things going on that he needed to take care of, the shop then wasn't even getting to be opened. It was just the two of us. We didn't have anybody else. And so, of course, that was hurting things. And, everything that he was going on with, it was very distracting. And, on top of the discouragement that we were feeling, added in, it was wearing us both down at that point. So with everything that was going on and how things were going, we had talked, and it was probably a couple weeks we were talking about it, and just decided that this wasn't working, and we don't really know what else to do to try to make it work. So one day before our 1-year anniversary, May the 4th of 2023, we made the announcement that we were going to be shutting the doors. We had a tournament planned for our 1-year anniversary that next night, so we still went ahead and did that, and that same, small group of guys, came out, and they were a little disappointed that, it was going to be going away, but they also understood, I think, when talking to them. So, we made the announcement on the 4th. We did the 1-year anniversary tournament because it was already planned. The flyers were already up, all that kind of stuff. And then the next day, May the 6th, we closed up shop, at least to the public. There was no reason to try to keep it going the way we were going. Again, the repairs were still doing okay, but Nick couldn't make it to the shop every day anymore. Obviously, I still couldn't. So he was going to continue to do the repairs, but by appointment only, essentially out of the shop. That was essentially all that was going to be left. We were going to list the other stuff, online. He might have, was going to try to maybe sell the stuff on eBay, something like that. Just try to unload some things or whatever. And that was essentially it. at that time anyway. So we had discussed what was going to happen with everything that was in the shop, and a bunch of it we had decided that we were going to divide up, just amongst ourselves. Again, we had all bought it out of our own pocket and stuff anyway, so, he bought a lot of stuff. I mean, he was able to put some more into it than I could. I after selling, the stuff that I talked about earlier, and just here and there trying to purchase a few other things, odds and ends to take up there. We both put a lot of money into it, but all of that stuff came out of our own pocket, but one thing that he told me from the very beginning was that he was going to make sure that I got more out of this than what I put in. That was his promise to me. And he stuck to that. So when it was all said and done, I actually got to bring home several of the game consoles that I had bought, a bunch of games for several of those consoles, and some of the money that was left, he also we divided amongst ourselves, and he gave me some money also, and so with that, I was able to really bump up my own individual collection. A lot of what you see, well, I don't know about a lot, but quite a bit of the stuff that you see behind me, and then some of the consoles that are on the other side of the room there, I had bought for the shop, or even some of the ones that I had bought, if they had sold, I still came away with, basically, I came away with a little bit more in the amount of what I spent with what I was able to bring back home. So that's, my collection itself, got a boost from that. So even the online stuff that we were doing was also going to get split. At that time, I was doing the streams for the shop at my house, here, in the dungeon. But I was also uploading a lot of things to the YouTube channel. And so when we decided to split everything up, he wanted to continue streaming also. And so it was decided that he would take the streaming channel and he was going to do his own thing with it. And then I would go and take the YouTube channel because of all of the stuff that I had already uploaded. I had been uploading things for like a year on this channel now. And, a lot of it I wanted to still keep up. I put a lot of time and effort into some of that stuff. And so I took the YouTube channel. And as I mentioned before, it's this YouTube channel here. The one that you are currently watching this video on is the old original CDs Games YouTube channel. And all of the stuff that I had uploaded back then, it's still there. You can still watch it. A lot of it even has the old CDs Games logos and that kind of stuff embedded in the videos and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's this channel, and been able to keep it going all this time later. But so I rebranded it for myself as the Grim Gamer, and just kind of started doing my own thing. That's where the YouTube thing, videos like this, the streams continued, and just, started building off of that. And it started, with some of the things I was doing for CDs Games. And so I had refocused my energy at that point. When we were deciding, and when it was decided we were going to shut down, I refocused my energy into all this stuff. Again, I was still doing a bunch of streaming at that point, so I created my own streaming account. There's a link in the description. I stream every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights. You can check that out, and playing all types of different games over there. But yeah, I refocused into the Grim Gamer branding, and just refocused all my energy here, and just try to continue on what I was doing at that point, just with this. I was all set to do all that. Rebranded the channel, started my own Twitch, from scratch. Created my own Facebook page, all that sort of stuff. And then a month or so goes by, and we started getting calls. Again, he still had the shop, he still had the space, he was still doing the repairs. Nick, I mean, and we started getting a bunch of phone calls. Not only just for the repairs, but like asking, well, what happened? Where did you guys go? When are you reopening? It was so weird. Like, we were getting more interest with the door closed than we ever did when we were open. So he and I start talking, and he starts talking to me about, well, what if we reopen? You know, again, this is only a month later or so. You know, and I was like, I mean, I suppose we could. And he goes, well, you know, I still got some stuff going on, but I'll still keep doing the repairs. I'll reopen it with different hours. You know, maybe that'll help. And you know, he had some other ideas of stuff, and he wanted to go all back in. You know, at that time when we started getting this interest, and but I gotta admit, at that time, you know, at that point in time, my focus had already shifted. You know, my focus was elsewhere. I have tunnel vision. I have tunnel vision bad. I always have, probably always will. And so when I had pivoted, you know, from CD's games to doing what I'm doing now, that is what I wanted to focus on. That's where I wanted my energy to go. I pretty much checked out on that already, you know, but he was adamant about it, and I could see that passion coming back, and he really wanted to do it. And so, you know, we started this thing together, and I was still going to support him, and if that's what he wanted to do, that's what we were going to do. So I did my best, and we jumped back in, and, well, we reopened the doors. The repairs would continue. The buy-sell trade would continue. I don't think we did the tournaments anymore. I think that stopped at that point. But we tried something else. We tried to do some raffles. You know, instead of the high score thing a month, we wanted to do a raffle. We were raffling off, like, an Xbox Series X, I think it was. But once again, once we reopened, it seemed like that interest vanished again. It's like we opened the door and the interest went out the door. So when we did the raffle, I think maybe 2, 3, 4 tickets sold. Maybe we sold next to nothing, you know, for that, and that wasn't worth it in the end, you know, from what I recall. So it was just. There was interest, we opened the doors, the interest was gone, and it was, once again, more of the same. I don't recall, but I think after reopening, I think it was only a 2-month thing, maybe, at best. And, you know, again, it was this same thing, and we closed the doors again. You know, and it was, once again, back to appointment only for the repairs. That lasted for a little bit. But I don't even think he continued doing that for very much longer. After that, my memory on this time frame is a little foggy. You know, again, I was, you know, and Nick, if you watch this, I apologize, brother, but I wasn't there at that point. When we decided to close the doors, you know, at that 1-year mark, I had checked out. And so those couple months after we tried to reopen, I don't really even remember. But it was just more of the same, and nothing was working, nothing was growing. It just was what it was. And because of that, you know, again, he was still all in. And by October of that year, Nick went and launched, you know, this full website, which is another thing we probably should have done sooner, but, you know, the money for that, you know, because he had to pay for this website. You know, to try to take some things online, trying to sell some things online, you know, and do that kind of thing. We still had that shop space. He was still paying for it. You know, he was making ends meet. But it was really all him at that point. You know, CD's games, as we had initially planned with trying to do like an arcade style thing, and then mix that with some buy, sell, trade stuff. To me, it was over at that point. with all the other things that was going on, we had a lot of stuff in the shop that, quite frankly, didn't belong there, but didn't have any other place to put it. After the launch of the website, Nick and I, we would continue to talk for a couple months, and eventually, being that it just wasn't working, he wanted to take things in a completely different direction. He wanted to try something new because he still had the space. So at that point, he brought in another friend of ours, another partner, and by March of 2024, so not quite even 2 years, CD's Games would officially get rebranded. That's where the branding for Nostalgic Nicks came to be. But the game shop itself was essentially gone. It was gone even before then, really, because again, he just tried to just do stuff online and just do the repairs by appointment and stuff. But at that point, I guess to me, it felt pretty much official. The CD's Games name, branding, it was all gone at that point. And, it really was over. So really, with the kind of on-again, off-again thing over the course of that time, CD's Games, the branding itself, I should say, it lasted from May of 2022 to March of 2024. But for me, in May of 2023, when we first closed the doors the first time, that's where it really ended for me. But that 1 year time frame, it was a good time. It was an interesting time, for me. It was an exciting time. Again, I have good memories of the place. We got to hang out. We got to shoot the breeze. We got to play games. We got to meet some people. We've got to try some exciting things. Again, we had these, I thought, great ideas, and ideas that I still think would work today if we could do it. But I didn't have the time, we didn't have the funding, and we didn't have the best location, and we didn't have support. I don't feel like we had support. Support's a big one. Support even might be the main one. You could have the best product in the world. You can have the best marketing. You could have the best people working on it. You could have the best central location that you could possibly have. But if you don't have interest from people, if you don't have support from the general public or support from other friends and family, it's simply not going to work. And we had none of this stuff. So the fact that we even, I guess, did it for as long as we did is probably kind of a miracle. But I do still look back on that time fondly. And on top of that, if it weren't for CD's Games, if it weren't for doing CD's Games with Nick at that time, for that time period, I wouldn't have the hobby that I have now. All of this, branched off and sprouted from that. I've always enjoyed games. I've played games since I was a kid. But the streaming, the collecting, really getting involved and invested in video games itself all stems from that time frame with CD's Games. And I'm very thankful for that because it's a hobby that I really enjoy now. And one that I hopefully can continue to get invested in and do maybe some other things in the future with as time goes on. I do have some other ideas of some other things I'd like to do. Nick and I have been talking, me and a cousin of mine who you just would have saw on the channel when we did the Detroit Retro Game Show, Crazy Squirrel. We've kind of been talking about some stuff. Maybe we can get some other things going. That's all gaming related. And all of this is stemming from my time at CD's Games. So it was a good time. I did enjoy it for the most part. It was an interesting time. I learned some things. So I still hold that time, close to my heart, and we'll never forget it. So that has been the brief history of CD's games. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already so you don't miss out on any other content coming to the channel. Whether it's retro game unboxings, retro hunting, the live stream replays, or just whatever else it is that I decide to do. So, with that being said, that's it for me for this one. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for watching. I hope this was at least somewhat interesting to you. And, yeah, with that, I am the Grim Gamer, also known as D. And until next time, I will catch you guys later.